everyone, my name is Paige and this is The Page Turner. Today I'm finally doing a video that I'm super excited about. This is the best and worst Star Wars books I've ever read. Because I have so many different books to talk about, I'm actually going to break this up into two different videos. This first one is going to be talking about the prequels and the original trilogy and all the books that kind of fall within that. And then the second video is really going to focus on the books that lead up to the sequels and then all the books within the sequels. And I'm really excited about this in particular because this year I've read over 40 Star Wars books, which makes up more than half of all the books that I've read this year, so I have quite a lot to talk about. I've obviously read books that span over a large time period, so what I'm going to do is talk about books like from the prequels and that kind of fit in with that era, and then the original trilogy and the sequels. And then as I go through each one, I'll talk about the best and worst of each of those eras, and then I'll also throw in which movies I like the best, which movies I like the worst, and the character that I like the best from each trilogy. Also, I just want to say real quick before we get started that I bought this shirt on May the 4th from Disney's shop, and I'm so excited to have it, and I love Ahsoka so much. We'll kind of go into that. Okay, so this first set of books I'm going to be talking about are all kind of books that are around the time period of the prequels, which is around the time of like the Clone Wars and the Galactic Republic and the Separatists. So I actually haven't watched these three movies since they came out, which was like 10, 15 years ago, and I've been meaning to again just because now Clone Wars is ended, the animated series, which I love to pieces. That's probably like one of my favorite parts of Star Wars. So I can't really say if I have a favorite movie for this. I know a lot of people really like Revenge of the Sith, and I feel like it's kind of gotten this cult following over the past few years, just from stuff that I've seen on social media and people that I talk to within the fandom. I'm definitely gonna have to rewatch all of them because I remember not really liking them that much, and those were actually the first Star Wars movies I saw, and it kind of was like, I don't really know about this. But I think one of my favorite characters from this time period is Ahsoka. Definitely Ahsoka. I love her so much. But if we're only focusing on the movies, I think my favorite character is Padme. So let's get into all of the books that I read in this like time period, and there are quite a few, and I read a mix of like graphic novels, and pretty much everything I read is canon. I haven't read a lot of the legend stuff, but there are a couple books that I want to talk about in regards to that. Okay, so starting with the huge graphic novel series is the Star Wars Clone Wars Adventures comics, or graphic novels. There's 10 of these. I got these from the library before the libraries closed for coronavirus, and I read through all of them, and I gave each of them around 2 to 3 stars. I think the reason why I rated them pretty low was because I didn't really like the art style of them. Each volume has 2 or 3 shorter stories within it. You don't really have to read these in any sort of order, which I didn't really realize until I was in the 3rd or 4th one. I was like, wait a second, there's no like continuity to this. Because the stories within here kind of jump around within the prequels time period anyway. So I guess they were like fun little adventure things meant for definitely a lower reading level than I have. I think it's more for like kids and children. But it was still fun to just kind of see other stories within the Clone Wars era. But I think for the most part, because I didn't like the art style and dialogue was just kind of weird, it just wasn't for me. I mean, but that is to say I did read all 10 of them, so I kept hoping that it would get better, but it just didn't. Jumping off of that, a novel that I read within this time period was Queen's Shadow by E.K. Johnston, and I talked about this book in my last video, but I actually really enjoyed this. I feel like E.K. Johnston does such a great job of writing characters, and this is definitely a character-driven novel, not so much about plot, because honestly I can't remember a lot of the plot that happened within it. I just remember just really enjoying Padme's character and seeing a different side of her, because Anakin is not really in this at all, which I actually really enjoyed. And this kind of talks about how she's coming out of being a queen and going into a senator and things that she's sort of dealing with. We see a lot more about her handmaidens, which I think are very interesting, and they all kind of have their own role. Obviously within her little world are these really kick-ass ladies that literally will protect her at all costs and are trained in battle, and I don't know, they're just really awesome. I think what also I really enjoyed about this was listening to the audiobook, because it's narrated by the lady that does the voice acting for Padme in the Clone Wars animated series, so you kind of get a little bit something extra out of it. And also I believe this is canon. It's not explicitly said really anywhere, and I found that that's also true for the other E.K. Johnston novel about Ahsoka, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but either way, it's still enjoyable and I really liked it. So then jumping off of that, the one that I want to talk about next is Ahsoka by E.K. Johnston. So this one I've also heard mixed things about whether or not it's canon, and I like to think that it is. There are definitely things in here that don't quite match up with the end of the last Clone Wars season, but I think they really tried to make certain things match up. And again, I think this is a novel that really just focuses on character more than plot. There are just certain things that go on in this that you really see how Ahsoka grows and changes and is like trying to navigate the world after Order 66, which was obviously a really horrific time for her. But beyond that, it's also just a really fun action adventure novel, and if you really like Ahsoka's character, I definitely recommend picking this up. And this is another one where you should listen to the audiobook because it's also narrated by Ashley Eckstein, who does the voice for Ahsoka in the Clone Wars animated series. Okay, so I have another set of graphic novels here, and these are also ones that I got from the library, and I've only read a couple of these, and I honestly didn't really like them that much. I think the art style is much better than the other ones that I mentioned, and these definitely follow along more with the Clone Wars animated series from 2008 to 2020. The stories themselves just weren't that interesting to me, and that's why I kind of gave up on these. So I ended up giving these around 3 stars. While they kept my interest, I guess, for the duration of the novel itself, and they're pretty short, I just didn't feel like I needed to continue with it, and it wasn't something that I felt added a whole lot to that universe and that part of the timeline. Okay, another book I want to talk about is Clone Wars by Karen Traviss. This is the novelization of the Clone Wars movie, which came out in, I think, 2007. There are obviously differences between this and the movie, and I think the book is actually much better because it really explores more of like what the characters are thinking, which obviously can't really be done on a very deep level within the movie. And I just also like that we get to see the movie from different perspectives. So I did end up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars. I think it followed the movie really well, but also added something to it that the movie just doesn't have. And I also just really enjoy Rex and Ahsoka's relationship in this because I feel like within the first couple seasons of the Clone Wars animated series, it's just kind of lacking. Like Dave Filoni has said multiple times, I guess, that Clone Wars is really about Ahsoka and Rex, but I feel like in the first couple seasons you really see the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and I just think Ahsoka is just a much more interesting character, and we get so much of Anakin and Obi-Wan in other parts of Star Wars. That's why I think I enjoyed the novel so much, because I could see things from more of like the clone perspective, and then Ahsoka as well, and how she's dealing with having Anakin as her master when he clearly just doesn't want her around. But I have to say, I think her relationship with him and Obi-Wan really grows, you know, obviously throughout the series, but then you see it, the first development of it within the book, and it's a little bit more there than it is for the movie. There are actually a couple sequels to that book, and they're not exactly considered canon for the Star Wars universe, so they're actually Legends novels, and I tried reading the second one, which is called Wild Space, and it's actually by Karen Miller. I gave up, I think, about 30 or 40% of the way through this one. I think this is like one of the worst Star Wars novels that I read, because it just felt like the characters just didn't seem well written, and they just felt so off base to me. Like, I honestly think I've read some fan fiction that gets these characters down more and really succinctly understands like their thoughts and their feelings and what they would do better than this novel did. And it was also just so boring. Like, they kept talking about things that were going on in the Senate and stuff, and I was like, we already know all of this. Like, we don't need to be told this again. And it was just kind of like, where is the action? Like, take me to the war, and I want to see things that are going on in the battlefront, and like the relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, and then like the clones and Rex, and it wasn't there, and it was so boring to me. And I was listening to the audiobook trying to help myself like get through it a little bit better, but yeah, it just really fell flat. I actually really like Rogue One as a movie. I know a lot of people don't, but I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was one of the best Star Wars movies. So the first book I want to talk about is Rubble Rising, and this is by Beth Revis. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it. You get to see the journey of Jyn before Rogue One starts, so this is even before Rogue One the movie. And what I really enjoyed about this was you really get to see more of her character and the relationship she had with Saw Gerrera, and just kind of how things are developing for her and where she ends up right as the movie starts. I think what I enjoyed about this so much was that I got to see more of Jyn's character. There's obviously a lot of ground to cover within Rogue One the movie, so to just kind of focus on her before the movie was really enjoyable for me. And I think what really makes Star Wars great for me too is like you get these really awesome female characters who really like don't take shit from nobody. To really see that within this book was awesome. Okay, and now we're moving into the original trilogy. Definitely my favorite character is Leia. I love Leia so much. I think, you know, she really has a lot of depth and she's very smart and strong, and I don't know, she's just like awesome, and she has really cool hair too. Definitely my favorite movie from this is Empire Strikes Back. I just love so many different moments in that. It's kind of silly sometimes, but it's really fun, and I think that classic moment of like the Luke, I am your father, is just so kick-ass, and like how can you beat that with any, you know, other Star Wars movie? That's so iconic. But obviously I think A New Hope has a soft spot in pretty much everyone's heart who really is into Star Wars, because it is the first one and it's like brilliant in so many ways. So what really fits in perfectly with the first movie is The Princess, the Scoundrel, and the Farm Boy. This is by Alexandra Bracken. This is actually the first Star Wars novel I ever read, and I actually met Alexandra Bracken and she signed this for me, which is super cool. So what I love about this is it's a different way of showing A New Hope. It's definitely for a middle grade audience, so it's like super fast to fly through. There's pictures in here even. And I think this just tells the movie in a very simple way and a very fun way, and I really enjoyed this. There are two other books that follow that, so one of them focuses mostly on Empire Strikes Back, and that one I have to read from my computer because I don't remember what it's called. It's called So You Want to Be a Jedi, and this is by Adam Gidwitz. I gave this one 1 star, and it's probably one of my least favorite Star Wars novels. I understand that this is meant for like a younger audience. Like I said, this whole kind of 3 series of books is meant for a middle grade audience, but this was written in second person, and it was so frustrating to be constantly told like, you want to be a Jedi and you will have to do this and you did this and you did this, and I'm like, no I didn't. And I know it shouldn't be that different than reading something from first person point of view, but it was just so weird and frustrating, and I was like, why was that an artistic writing style decision that everyone decided to make? Like I just I didn't like that at all. And then the one following that is called Beware the Dark Side, and this is focusing on Return of the Jedi, and it's by Tom Engelberger, and I give this one 3 out of 5 stars. Obviously this was meant to enhance the movie and not just straight retell the story, but it was so forgettable for me that I can't really tell you what I specifically enjoyed or what I specifically didn't like. And for me, I just felt like the one that focused on A New Hope was so much better in its execution than this one was, and it ultimately was kind of meh to me. Okay, so another one from this original trilogy era is also from a certain point of view, and this is by a huge variety of authors. I give this one 2 out of 5 stars because I didn't enjoy it a whole lot. There were just so many stories that focused on things that I just did not care about. I feel like A New Hope has been picked apart so many times, and we've seen and heard everything explained in that movie, from like a character that you'll see for 1 second on the screen, and then they get this like long story in this novel, and you're like, I just don't care. Like, I don't care about them. So I guess if you're really interested in learning more about the background characters and kind of their stories, then this is definitely something for you, but for me, I just didn't care. And then coming out of the original trilogy and now going into the sequel trilogy, there are a couple books in between that I want to talk about. One of which being Bloodline by Claudia Gray. This is a story that focuses on Leia as she's a little bit older and she's working to get the resistance going, because obviously the Empire is terrible. She's trying to find a way to do this diplomatically. I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. I think it kind of dragged in some places, but ultimately it was like a really good character study of Leia, and it was interesting to see how she is when she's a little bit older, but not quite as old as she is in the sequels themselves. At this point in this book, she knows that she's Darth Vader's daughter, and she's kind of like battling with that. This is a little bit of a spoiler, but there is a scene where it's kind of revealed to like the entire galaxy that she is Darth Vader's daughter, and she just has this really kick-ass moment where she walks into this party and she's dressed all in black, and people are like, you know, scandalized obviously, but it was just like, yes, Leia, you go girl. So then this next book that I'm going to talk about is kind of starting all this introduction of these books that are the Journey to Star Wars novels, which I am a huge fan of. And these novels started coming out once Disney bought Star Wars and all the rights to Star Wars. I think this is a really big contested point with people, is these books kind of swept away the Legends novels that are now no longer canon. But I think the really great thing, and I think about this with Star Wars all the time, is that you can find this piece of Star Wars that really is yours, and you feel like you just really like it, and it doesn't matter if things don't match up, you know, within the universe. It's like, who cares? It's just a fun story about people who like use space swords. I don't know. It's fun. It's magic. who cares? But I have to say, I really like these Disney canon novels, and this is one of the first ones I read, and it's Star Wars Lost Stars, and this is also by Claudia Gray. Claudia Gray did such an amazing job with the Star Wars novels. I think this one, and then there's one other one that I'm going to talk about that she did just a really great job. The one that I talked about previously, Bloodline, is also by her, and I think it's more intended to be more like adult, less young adult, but her young adult ones are just fantastic. So this is a big book that talks about two characters. Both are kind of training to be in the Empire and like in the Navy. Both of them are kind of coming at it from a different perspective. They're both from the same planet, but one is from kind of a more well-off family and the other one, she is not. It kind of focuses on how the Empire tries to like tear them apart because they're so close to one another, and they both kind of take that in different ways, and their character's development grows in very different ways. It's kind of a sad story, you know, to see how the Empire has really brainwashed some kids, and some come out of it really proving that they have this adversity to not be brainwashed by the Empire, kind of like Finn is in the sequel trilogy. Like, I just think that's a really awesome character point with him, and that's how one of the characters is in this. So I definitely recommend picking this up and checking this one out. And to further that point, if you don't want to read the really long novel, there is a manga series that is based on that, and I've only read the first one, but it follows the story really well, and I'm gonna read 2 and 3. So that is all the books that I wanted to talk about for the prequels and the original trilogy. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to be doing my second video, which is also going to be talking about books that lead up to the sequels and then all the books within the sequels, and then there are some that come afterwards too. So definitely stay tuned for that, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. By the way, if you're a big Star Wars fan like me, definitely leave me a comment down below and let me know what your favorite movie or character is, or if you have any books that you've read and you find are really awesome. It can be canon, legends, whatever, graphic novels. I don't care. I want to like consume as much Star Wars content as possible. But I would love to hear from you guys because I love the Star Wars community. I think it's so great, and there are so many really awesome people that I've talked with. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye!